Okay folks, so we're gonna do one video shoot here, and then this is basically, dumb mistakes or the 3 pitfalls seller financing, and I'm gonna do it for both the buyers and for the sellers. It's different consequences, different strategies, but I'm just gonna do one video and then put the same video at the end of each one of those. So for a buyer, okay, and this seems obvious, but for some reasons it's not. People are sitting there going, why would a lender even get involved if the seller is offering seller finance? Well, if the contract is going to be a 15, 20, 30 year, 27 year, but if it's a fixed rate contract and there's no balloon and there's no expectation from the seller that the buyer pay it off early or pay off that contract balance, then you don't need me. Doesn't matter. I mean, it's just a contract that's going to just be like a normal mortgage, and if you want to prepay it without a penalty, if you have the ability to refinance it or just make regular payments until it's done, then just, all right, you're done. You don't need any more information on me. If, however, the seller wants to get their money ahead of schedule, if it's 2 years down the road or 5 years down the road, at that point then, as a buyer, if your Uncle Bob, who's going to leave you $1 million, has not passed away at that point, then at some point you are going to have to apply for a mortgage loan and figure out how to refinance and pay off what you owe to the seller. Say, do you want to do that and figure out what your game plan is now, or do you want to wait until you're 60 days away from the deadline to do this, which is what most people do? Most of the transactions that get referred to me from the title company that does a great majority of these transactions are people that waited until the last minute and then they find out that, oops, I don't qualify. Now, some sellers are okay to extend the terms of the contract, but they're going to want money to do it. Some of the sellers are not willing to extend the contract because they can just get the house back. Chances are that the value of the house has gone up, and that if you can't perform on your contract, you will forfeit your equity. So the reason you want to talk to a lender on the front end of the transaction is so that you have a game plan that you can put into practice and execute prior to your deadline. And even if you're an ability to refinance or to pay off the seller at 2 years and you still got another year left, play it safe and just be smart with things. So that's that as far as the buyers are concerned. For the seller side, the consequences aren't so serious, but they can be embarrassing. There have been guideline changes already in February and in May of 2024 with the way that Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac treat what is called a departing residence, where the seller has a home and he's selling it, or he's not selling it traditionally, but either converting it to a rental or selling it on seller finance. The problem comes that if the transaction is not done correctly, the seller, when they sell their home and they get the price that they wanted, they get a large down payment, they're getting great cash flow, the transaction is structured for success, the buyer and the seller, everybody's happy. The problem comes that if the seller goes and applies to get into a mortgage on their next transaction, if this portion of it has not been done correctly, the underwriter is going to say, Mr. Jones, you don't qualify with 2 mortgage payments. We can't approve your financing for you. And you're going to go, but, this buyer gave me all this money, and here's all my papers, and here's how the transaction's structured. I said, yep, that's correct. But we can't count any of that income. We can count the money for the down payment. We can count that as a source of funds for closing, but the payment and the structure of the contract that's being paid to you does not offset any of your underlying mortgage payment. Understand that when the underwriter sees your credit report, they're going to be looking at the mortgage the payment that you're trying to qualify for, but they're going, well, what's happened with this mortgage? You said you sold your home, but the mortgage is still there, and you don't have a traditional settlement statement where this mortgage was paid off. Learning how to structure that transaction correctly is the key for sellers to getting into their next home. Now, if you as a seller sold your home on seller finance and you qualify for both mortgage payments, peace out, you're done. You don't need this piece of information. The vast majority of people who are going to sell their home on seller finance need to meet with the lender, figure out what is the minimums that you need to have as far as cash and cash flow on this property, and how does the contract need to be structured for success so that you can qualify for a loan into the next property. So hopefully this was helpful to you. Thank you for coming into thecreditjungle.com. This is George Anderson. Remember, push button, get mortgage professional, and this is what I do. I help people figure out this jungle of these guidelines and all the different options that are available to you so that you can ultimately sell your home on the terms that are more than likely going to be way better than you would get on a traditional sale. But how to actually use that to your advantage and leverage that cash flow to get your costs into the next home well below what your neighbors did who did it the old-fashioned way. So talk to you soon and have a great day.
George of the jungle, strong as he can be.